Hello, this is Sean from Centric Wealth Advisory. This is another video to go through a template that I think will add value to either those that are studying financial planning, those who just want to learn more about estate planning in South Africa using a template, or those who are estate planning practitioners that just want to have a template to refer to just to help them with calculations. So they have a general guideline in terms of how to draft a will. So this document was created a few years ago for education purposes. I'm just going to go through it with you now. So this template has quite a few tabs on it. It's really taken from premiums and problems, which I have mentioned over here, the top. And Premium Problems is a very nice book by Old Mutual, and they make it a new edition every year. And basically, inside that textbook is all the different templates for various types of calculations. And having gone through a lot of textbooks during my studies, I just found that the Premiums and Problems had the best layout for state duty calculations for those married in and out of community of property. However, in addition to my studies, having done not only the CFP um, designation, but also FISA's FPSA, which is the fiduciary practitioner South Africa, I had to do an additional studies in estate planning, etc. And a lot of that has now resulted in me creating this template for just not only myself doing the calculations, but really for anyone wanting to learn more about how does estate duty work, how is it calculated, what's included, what's excluded, how do you actually put together a will based on your assets and liabilities. This is really going to help you when you play around with it, better understand what an estate planner would do if they were to do the calculation for estate duty and how to reduce taxation in your state when you pass away by strategically bequeathing assets to your spouse, as an example, or having investments that are not estate dutiable, like retirement funds, etc. So those sort of things would be quite useful when you speak to someone like myself, who's not only a certified financial planner, but a fiduciary practitioner as well. Here's more information about me in terms of my designations, etc. If you want to go to our website, just click on the logo. It'll take you to Centric Wealth Advisory just to get more information about us. Um, I'm going to try and go through this video under 10 minutes just to show you what it can do. This template has got a lot of hyperlinks that will help you navigate through this template to just make your life easier because there's quite a lot going on. Firstly, there's the interstate succession. The reason why I wanted to put this at the top is if you don't have a will or don't have a valid will, then Interstate Succession Act would be applicable. Now, what I've done is I've linked as much as possible to justice.gov.za. So I've got all official government acts that I've linked, taken from their websites, got on the links and put it in as a hyperlink on this template. This is for you to read through. Obviously, if you're studying financial planning, this act is useful because there's certain sections of the act you need to know. There are 7 ways in which assets can be distributed if you pass away without a will or without a valid will. These are the 7 scenarios, useful to know. It's also mentioned in the Interstate Succession Act. There's also a link here to a portal on the government's Master of the High Court. All the information here, everything here. This is the different scenarios, but I've just done it into graph diagram format, if I can call it that. Even some court cases here, which is more applicable to those who are studying because they do refer to these court cases when they're asking questions around estate planning, etc., and interstate. What were the outcomes of these court cases? Generally, that's tested by the institutions. Now let's just go on to um, the different templates. So you have estate planning, marriage in community, and out of community. In summary, if it's in community, assets liabilities are divided in two. If it's out of community, it's the greater estate minus the lesser estate divided by two when you do the accrual calculation. But the premise behind all of this is the same. You're going to calculate, obviously, the estate duty. You're going to work out the residue for 4Q, which determines how much you reduce your state duty by, because anything that you bequeath to your spouse is excluded from estate duty. Calculation executor's fees. That's important because you need to know what is your executor going to be handling in your estate. A good example of that would be if you have a life policy and your beneficiary is your spouse or any person really. If it's a natural person, that life policy will go into the estate duty template as a deemed asset, but it'll not go in your executor's fees because your executor is not going to handle that money. It's paid directly from the life company to the beneficiary. However, if the estate duty, if the life policy is paid directly to the estate, it is estate duty applicable and is executor's fees applied because that executor is handling the money in the estate. He needs to distribute that money accordingly based on the last will and testament or for liquidity purposes to settle debt, etc. Apportionment of estate duty, um, that is a separate calculation. There's actually an example over here. I will just read through this, the apportionment of estate duty over here, just to better understand, apply to the example. I don't want to go through this template with a practical case. I can maybe do that later on with the case study. But again, this is really more for you to just read up and understand what it means. Liquidity analysis just simply means how much liquidity do you have in your estate to pay estate duty, to pay the executive fee, and also to settle any debt or have any cash that needs to be transferred to whatever the case may be. And then a calculation of CGT, which is obviously included in your estate duty calculation. Then you've got your marriage out of community, pretty much exactly the same thing. Only difference is that you're going to have your accrual claim. I must quickly click on that, where you actually put in your value of your estate before marriage, and then you put in the assets in your marriage, and then you're going to take the greater minus less divided by 2, and then you'll do the calculation for the accrual system. And then that accrual will go into the amount for the apportionment of estate will go under your liquid assets, etc. And there's also a hyperlink. So if you click on that, it'll take you to the section. If you were not on your table of contents, you could still do it here. And then there's your CGT, there's your executor's fees, your master's fees. Your master's fees actually is pulled through from FISA. FISA is the Fiduciary Institute of South Africa. I'm a member of FISA and also where you get your FPSA. I don't know. There we go. FPSA designation. There's currently, at the time of this recording, 238 in South Africa that have that designation. And it's obviously grown in popularity for reasons such as this. One needs to know different aspects of estate planning. And if you don't have a postgrad diploma in financial planning law or qualification in estate planning or whatever the case is, that designation requires you to study specifically to fiduciary duties, which is things like this, administration of deceased estates, etc. Anyway, so in summary, I have quite a bit of knowledge on these things, which is why I built this template. And essentially what you want to do is you want to complete this information as you go along. If there's a link, it means that it's pulling through automatically. You just have to complete the calculator. So if it's blank, go to the hyperlink, it'll take you. If there's a usufruct, you would then go to the usufruct over here. There's actually a calculation for the usufruct. Let's say it's a male. The male is 50 next birthday. It's going to work out the life expectancy, the presence of R1. If you're not sure what that means, Here's some examples of, well, here's firstly the different parties to usufructs is the annuities, habitatio, sorry, is user of the usufruct. All this information is just gathered from previous notes, from studies. I found this to be quite useful because there's quite a few examples of how usufructs work, how you would calculate it. So there's usufruct passing, usufruct ceasing, and this is where this calculation comes in, because when you actually do the calculation, you need to put in the information, and obviously the life expectancy for a male and female will differ, but you can put any age over here. It'll calculate it up until 90, and then it'll do that for you. So if you're doing the calculation, you know, unfortunately, you have to do it manually, but this is how you would do the calculation. And once you've done that calculation, you'll put the amount in here. Accrual claim. So the accrual claim for section 41A, that's over here. You're gonna minus the accrual claim plus the section 4Q. If it's in community, you're only going to deduct the section 4Q. Now, what I did here, and quickly show you just very briefly, is your section 4Q deduction, which is quite important, is whatever you bequeath to your spouse is deducted from your state duty. So in this case, just very, very simply, 50 million primary residence, 6 million rand life policy paid to the spouse. So when you do the 6 million, because it is the spouse, you're going to deduct it as part of your section 4Q. If it was not your spouse, you cannot do that, obviously. Now, because I've only bequeathed 10% of the property to the spouse, the rest obviously you bequeath to other beneficiaries, etc. There's a state duty of 3.6 million. However, if you went and said, well, if I made 100% bequeath of my primary residence to my spouse, there's a 31 million. Then what happens is that you're going to not have your state duty applicable because you are not incurring any estate duty on the 31 million rand because you bequeath the full amount to your spouse, which means that there is no estate duty. Your net estate is minus 3.5 million. So you actually got a net dutiable of minus 9.6. And this is a note here: in the event that the first dying is not utilized in any or 3.5 million abatement, the surviving spouse has been entitled to the unused deduction. So that's just a very, very basic example here of how that would apply, and obviously what one would do. Just bear in mind the reason why it's 31 and not 50, because you're thinking, well, how did that work? Is because you're taking 25 million of the 50 million property plus the 6 million, which is going to the spouse, adds up to 31. Why? Because when you're married in community, it says here, you've got a minus 50% of your deductions, and you've got 50% of your joint estate. This is done for you, but the point is, I'm going to just explain in community means that your assets liabilities are divided by 2. So if you weren't aware of that, this is how you would do the calculation. And without out of community, you don't divide it by 2, you do the accrual claim. So the point I'm making is, if you have never done estate planning and have no clue how this works, this is a nice template to go through, learn more about it. You can go to the table of contents. You can go through all the information related to financial planning. More about estate duty over here is a lot of information. All the different acts that are applicable: Estate Duty Act, Pensions Fund Act, Civil Unions, Marriage Act, Recognition of Customary Marriage. There's an introduction to estate duty over here. When is estate duty due? What accounts to constitute as an estate? Here's the executive's fees. Executive's fees can be negotiable, but 3.5% is the norm, and there's a VAT on that. So your state executive fee is normally, if it's 3.99%, then it's normally, sorry, 3.5%. 3.99 was the amount at 14% VAT. So if I made this 14, it used to be 3.99%, but now because VAT is 15%, that's the new amount. But depending on the size of your state, that actually might be reduced. Limited rights, let's go into the different examples. That's really more for students that are studying financial planning or going to specialize in estate planning. These are a bit more acts that one can refer to. It is also at the top over here, but I've just done it if you want to just refer to the table of contents instead. And then understanding life policy, etc. There's more information in the tables below. This is regarding life assurance and estate planning, retirement funds, and lump sums. And then the comparison between investment vehicles when you're looking at unit trust, endowments, retirement annuities, tax-free savings, retail RSA, retail bonds, share portfolios, the different elements, tax exemptions, CGT, access, session, protection, beneficiaries, all that information just gives you a bit of a guideline. This is again purely for education purposes. But however, I would definitely speak to a financial planner, someone like myself who is familiar with the types of products. As an example, retirement funds, and just go here quickly to show you what I mean. Retirement funds are tax-free on interest earned, as you can see. Capital gains tax not applicable. You can access retirement funds or retirement annuity from age 55. However, it does not form part of your estate because of Section 37C of your Pensions Fund Act here. And it says here, these policies are held and named retirement fund to which the manager belongs are subject to the rules of the fund. In terms of Section 37C, the trustees of the fund must determine who becomes entitled to the proceeds. So basically, if you pass away, your retirement funds do not form part of your estate for state duty purposes. That's why it says it's exempt from estate duty. So when you die, the retirement annuity policy needs to be distributed to beneficiaries. You normally nominate. But if you don't have any nominated beneficiaries, then there's a note over here. If the fund does not become aware or cannot trace any descendant within the 12-month period as the member has not nominated a nominee, the benefit must be paid to the estate of the member and the executive fees is applicable. So executive fee is not applicable if you nominate beneficiaries, but because there is no nominee and they cannot find any descendants or beneficiaries or nominees, that's what happens. So it's important also to nominate the right people on your retirement funds and also obviously other investments as well, so that the rightful person receive the proceeds. Right, so that gets as much as I really want to go through. This is, as I say, more of a tool for you to play around, put notes in here. Let's say, for example, you've got vehicles and you're going to put in Land Rover, and let's say BMW as your, just a note for yourself, like what vehicles am I putting into the state? That's the vehicles. What cash? You might say, it's a money market account, um, as an example. Credit loans, etc., unit trust investments, you're going to sum everything up. And then you're basically going to just complete this information and then it'll calculate the estate duty applicable. Now, if the estate, it's showing you a dutiable estate of 20 million. So let's just go and switch this off. Say you, okay, bequeath nothing to the spouse on this one because it's out of community. Let's just go and put in a large amount here. So say it's 100 million. It'll calculate at 25%. Why? Because if you go to more about state duty, it'll tell you the tax rates applicable. So if it's dutiable amounts excess of 30 million. So there's a lot of back-end formulas that are running to make this work. But as I said, go through this. There's a hyperlink to the different calculators underneath. Complete that, come back. It'll pull through automatically if it's got a hyperlink, which means that apart from the master's fees, but the hyperlink will assist with regards to just navigating on each template. And then once you have familiarized yourself, then you can maybe speak to a estate planner based on your own calculations. Sit with them and say, this is what I've done. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Can you assist me? And then you can have a conversation around your last will and testaments, because a will is the most important document you're ever going to have, because that's going to speak to the executor with regards to what you want to do with your estate at death. If you have a trust in place, you need to make sure that there's no loans to the trust, because those are assets in your estate, and there might be money due from the trust to the person dying, and that could cause complications. You also need to look at that as well, because you might have property in the trust, and you don't want to dispose those properties to pay back the loan to the person who made it, the person dying, or first dying. You want to ensure that all your ducks in a row. And that's why it's important to speak to someone that is qualified to give advice, and they can draft a will for you, taking all of this into consideration, so that you can pay less tax, bequeath your assets correctly to the right nominated beneficiaries, but also ensure, more importantly, you've got liquidity in your estate so that you can pay the estate duty, the executor's fees, cover any other debt that might be applicable, so that you don't have to sell assets in your estate to settle accounts, pay for different things, because that's what the executor does. The executor's part of their duties is to settle debt, to pay accounts on your behalf, etc. But if you've got assets that are paying outside of your estate, that can also help just with running costs as your estate has been wound up. Because unfortunately, you wind in an estate, even with a valid will that is executed properly, it does take time to wind up your estate, because there's a lot of things that need to be done before the estate can be wound up. Anyway, that being said, thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. As always, this template is in the description of this video for you to download and just go through it. If there's any questions, you're welcome to make a comment in the comment section. But if you are a student, hope this helps. If you're learning about estate planning for the first time, please play around with it, just so you have a better understanding how this works. And because this is what it is, this is exactly what a estate planner is going to do when they do your calculations. And lastly, if you don't have a will, please do find someone to assist with regards to drafting a will. And secondly, having someone be appointed as the executor, so that if you pass away, you have someone looking after your affairs when you're no longer around, to ensure that your loved ones have the correct financial support when they need it most. Bye for now. Thanks for taking the time, and hope to make another video soon.